Tonight, local businesses rejoice as the South Australian government begins easing coronavirus restrictions. And local barley farmers left stunned as China imposes crippling tariffs on their exports.
From our 7 Spencer Golf Studios, your nightly news with John Hunt begins now.
Good evening, everyone. Local businesses have welcomed the South Australian government's plans to ease coronavirus restrictions earlier than expected. From Friday, cafes and restaurants will be able to host up to 20 people and serve alcohol. Laura Milovanovic has more.
It's been a long process, but today another step forward in getting back to normal. South Australia is now following in the footsteps of surrounding states by easing more restrictions.
Any release of restrictions, movement in the restrictions is going to help with the economy, full stop. Once businesses start getting back to normal, they'll start employing again and putting people back in seats.
And putting people in seats is exactly what's happening. From Friday, restaurants and cafes will be able to host 20 people, 10 outside and 10 inside.
I think the smaller cafes will definitely be back to some sort of normality with a couple of different sittings. That'll help the situation for them.
Stage 2 restrictions have also been brought forward to June 5, 3 days earlier than expected. Locals hopeful it will bring some economic relief for those in the regions.
And then we've got the June long weekend, so hopefully that'll bring people to the region, to Flinders Ranges, shopping in Port Augusta.
Cinemas, gyms and beauty therapy will also soon return with some form of restrictions.
We are getting closer, but I think there's still a fair way to go, obviously, to help the larger businesses.
More information will be released in the coming days over the specifics of the Stage 2 restrictions and what it will mean for larger businesses like pubs and clubs.
Mid-North farmers are reeling from China's decision to slap an 80% tariff on Australian barley imports. Producers say they're already counting their losses, just weeks into the new growing season.
2,000 hectares of barley now in limbo. This Mid-North farmer, one of the many devastated by the decision.
It's terrible news, really. It really does knock us around.
Finishing sowing just last week, he says this decision couldn't have come at a worse time.
We would be expecting to hopefully reap between 5,000 and 6,000 tonnes of barley, so it's possibly going to cost us about $250,000.
The York Peninsula and South Australia in particular produce about 2 million tonnes of malting barley, and China is our biggest market by far.
The 5-year tariff implemented by the Chinese government, who claim they're illegally subsidised.
That is not true, and the Australian government do not give any subsidies to the farmers.
We've been stating this for 18 months that we are subsidising, heavily subsidising our barley growers, which I've got a lot of barley growers would argue differently.
However, locals believe China is retaliating over Australia's advocacy for a global COVID-19 investigation.
I wasn't really surprised because I think they were intending to do something to us because of the fact that we wanted to push for the inquiry into the coronavirus.
As discussions with China continue, other lifelines could be on the cards. Agreements with India and Indonesia are being investigated in a bid to keep Australia's barley industry afloat.
Just recently signed a free trade agreement, to my information, with Indonesia. That's around, I think, from about 500,000 tonnes of barley. So there's another market there.
But for now, these farmers will soldier on.
We're all in the same boat. We're all just wondering what is going to happen, whether they'll change their mind or whether the other markets will turn up. We just got to wear it because we're price takers. We can't do anything else about it.
Shari Hams, 7 Spencer Golf News.
The sobering reality of coronavirus lockdowns is being felt financially in Port Lincoln, with the City Council releasing a March budget review. Despite the bleak figures, councils say it's not as bad as first predicted.
Fires, floods and now a pandemic, Port Lincoln's faced a tough start to 2020. In March, Council ordered a budget review to see how bad the financial damage was likely to be, and the figures are in.
The outcome, while it's not good, is much better than we expected.
The biggest blowout, spending on the trouble-plagued leisure centre expansion, which went into liquidation last year, over budget by $620,000, the entire project costing ratepayers more than $5 million. On top of that, the centre has also lost another $59,000 while the doors are closed.
The fact that the council moved quickly when the company went into administration and took over the management of the build meant that we had not very large delays.
The weather also a worry. January's massive downpour, which saw city streets transform into raging rapids and left businesses soaked, led to $125,000 in damages. Another financial blow coming from shut social centres.
We were quite pleasantly surprised in the fact that it wasn't as bad as we expected. Our Visitor Information Centre and the Nautilus Theatre, because they're closed, obviously we had some losses compared with the previous year.
The cancelled shows costing them more than $57,000, and the Visitor Information Centre also in the red, with a $34,000 loss as tourism grounded to a halt.
We prepared for it and we're still in a reasonably good position.
Council, however, is optimistic, banking on things improving. The 2021 budget will be released later this year. Nathan Regter, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
A 39-year-old Port Pirie woman will be appearing in court after allegedly being caught drink driving near a school zone Monday afternoon. Patrols pulled over the driver on Anzac Road in Risdon Park just after 3. Police allege the driver recorded a blood alcohol reading of 0.130, with a child also allegedly present in the vehicle. She was reported for drink driving, and her car was impounded for 28 days. Airline company Regional Express has boosted COVID-19 safety measures, with all passengers required to wear a flu mask when flying. Passengers will be required to bring their own mask or purchase one at check-in, blocking entry onto the plane if they don't have one. The strict new measures an attempt to slow the spread of COVID when state borders begin to open and the airline resumes major operations. Masks will be mandatory from June 1st. Still to come tonight, the region's agricultural shows plead for federal government assistance, and a new program targeting youth unemployment launched in Port Pirie. Welcome back. Country show organisers are calling for help from the federal government after hundreds were cancelled this year. They say the industry is in desperate need of a multi-million-dollar support package to keep the events going.
With country shows out of the question for this year, experts warn without financial aid, the show might not go on in 2021.
Some unfortunately may not even be able to afford to open again.
More than 580 local, regional and state shows are held across Australia each year, all of them cancelled in 2020 due to coronavirus restrictions, putting financial pressure on dozens of communities.
It's just to try and keep the doors open, so next year they've got an opportunity to run their show.
Agricultural Australia calling for the federal government to step in, asking for a $30 million support package.
They can put all those things down on paper and show that it's threatening their existence. Well, of course, people like me would be lobbying to try and make sure that they survive.
The federal government has already announced funding for agricultural shows. Kadina, Clare, Balaclava, Kimber and Mount Remarkable all receiving a slice of the $700,000 grant.
The federal government is showing that it's a friend of country shows.
There was only 122 societies that were awarded the grant, so there was over 300 that were disappointed. But it does show the community and government that there's a huge need for infrastructure upgrade.
Organisers say they're trying to think outside the box to stay afloat, but fear many are on borrowed time.
We need them to survive. They're a very important part of the country.
Nathan Regter, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
Lighthouse Youth Project has touched down in Port Pirie, and volunteers are preparing to host a BMX networking event. They're working hard to guide disadvantaged young people by using approachable mentoring techniques.
Riding for a brighter future, these Lighthouse members are ready to make their mark.
We're a registered not-for-profit and we work with disadvantaged young people in the community, mainly in South Australia and also in Tasmania.
They're planning an upcoming BMX event to mentor Port Pirie's younger generation.
Today we are organising and pre-planning for an event that we're going to have here. It's to encourage people to ride BMX bikes, to repair them and also to show them what job opportunities are available.
their own experiences shaping the program, helping at-risk kids who are struggling to gain employment.
Always ridden a bike and it's probably kept me from dying. And some of the guys that you see behind me riding are professionals too. We've just always ridden and realised we wanted to give something back.
Local employers are backing the campaign, calling it a great initiative.
Oh, it's amazing. Anything that we can get to come to Port Pirie where we can actively engage people is going to make a difference.
Port Pirie is also seen as having some issues with unemployment, being a regional town that's probably had some issues in the past.
A date for the event isn't set in stone. Stakeholders say it couldn't come soon enough with stigma surrounding unemployed youth.
So many opportunities, there's so many industries screaming out for youth. I think just there's a little bit of fear in regards to that.
Employers on site that'll be talking about job opportunities in the local area, and there'll also be some professional riders here.
Shari Hams, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
Local Port Augusta Aboriginal artists have started working on a large piece of street art. A section of the water pipeline on the Augusta Highway will be painted as part of SA Water's reconciliation plan.
It's a work in progress, bringing together local artists in unity. This pipeline set for a colourful upgrade to bring home an important message.
These young ladies have a story to tell about how they started and where they are today. So I just think it's a community effort, and it's great to have them put their hand up to do this.
This piece is just families coming together, community coming together, not just the Indigenous people but non-Indigenous as well.
The work's part of SA Water's 3-year reconciliation action plan to engage with Aboriginal communities.
It's about creating relationships with community members in our local regions that we operate, and finding opportunities for them to celebrate their culture.
The artwork will join a number of several colourful pieces around the city, local residents welcoming the changes.
Give some vibrancy into our community. Port Augusta is a gateway to north, east, west or south, so having this mural I think is just a beginning.
Each artist hoping the painting echoes their feelings about reconciliation.
Just the community coming together and for us to showcase our talents and just being as one in the community.
The mural is expected to be completed by the end of the week. Laura Milovanovic, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
Stay with us. Drivers reminded to stay safe on the roads during winter. And Port Augusta's CBD set to light up. With the winter fast approaching, locals are reminded to adjust their driving in the rain. The RAA says there's a 10% increase in rear-end collision during wet weather months. A study conducted by the insurer shows cars travelling at 50 kilometres an hour required an extra 10 metres braking distance in wetter conditions, with vehicles travelling at 100 requiring an extra 37 metres. Drivers are also reminded to be mindful of pedestrians and cyclists, who are harder to spot when it's raining. A Port Pirie motorbike rider has been arrested on Ellen Street after allegedly refusing to submit to a random breath test. Patrol stopped the rider just before 6, where police asked a 41-year-old man to do an alcohol and drug test. The suspect is alleged to have failed to comply with authorities. He's been charged with a raft of offences and will appear in Port Pirie's Magistrate Court in September. Port Augusta's CBD will be shining a little brighter from now on as part of a new upgrade. Old orange lights have been replaced by LEDs that will reduce power consumption and maintenance costs while also increasing safety. They've been installed around the city centre precinct and surrounding areas. The project part of an agreement between the City Council and SA Power Networks. Time to check how things are shaping up at the petrol pump this week. Here's Nathan Rector with Fuel Watch.
Welcome to another week of Fuel Watch, and it's been a bit up and down for petrol prices, so as usual, it pays to shop around. Starting with unleaded, and it's not looking the best for the regions. Port Lincoln has seen a spike with a 2-cent jump from last week, now averaging $1.02. Whyalla has jumped to $1.06, while Port Augusta remains the same at $1.09, still the most expensive in regional South Australia. Port Pirie is seeing red with a 3-cent rise from last week, now averaging $1.04. Kadina sitting at $1.03, while Broken Hill is averaging $1.23 a litre. Adelaide is feeling some relief to the hip pocket as the only region to see a drop from last week, now averaging 92 cents a litre. Turning over to diesel now, and it's relatively the same from last week. Port Lincoln, Whyalla and Port Augusta has seen no movement at all. Port Pirie seeing prices spike to $1.09, while Kadina has seen a 1-cent drop from last week, also sitting at $1.09 a litre. In the Silver City, it's relatively the same at $1.25, while Adelaide has seen a 2-cent drop. Finishing off with a quick look at autogas, and it's good news. Port Lincoln has seen a welcome drop of 4 cents from last week, now averaging 85 cents a litre. Whyalla's prices have also dropped to 84. Port Augusta, Port Pirie, Kadina and Broken Hill have all remained the same. Adelaide has again seen a drop from last week, now averaging 74 cents a litre. Now remember, these prices are the regional averages and do not reflect any one particular outlet. And if you do find a spot that does sell unleaded diesel or auto gas for cheaper, make sure to let us know on our Facebook page.
Stay with us after the break. We check the day's finance news and we'll have the weather details with Britt. Hello again. Time for a look at the financial markets, and it was a mixed day across the board. Bankers say on a Westpac was in the green, up by around 0.5%. Wesfarmers also experiencing a slight increase, up 0.3%, while Santos also rose by a similar amount. However, Elders was in the red, down nearly 3%. Centrex dropped by 14%, while CSL also took a hit. And the ASX 200 was up by 0.2%, while the All Ords rose by 21 points. And with a look at what's happening in the weather, here's Britt with the details.
Thanks, John, and good evening. We saw mild conditions today with showers coming through this afternoon. Maximum temperatures sat 1 to 3 degrees below average, reaching just 18 degrees at Port Augusta, Whyalla and Woodner today, 17 at Port Pirie, Port Lincoln, Kadina and Cleve all 16, Broken Hill and Coffin Bay 15, Clare 13 degrees. Looking at today's skies, cloud crossing southern SA with a cold front brought those showers over central and southern coasts. Low cloud moved over the west coast with a southerly flow in the wake of that front. To our north, high jet stream cloud over the interior, but no rain up there. Moving on now to tomorrow, and there is a strong wind warning in place for the Spencer Gulf with west to northwesterly winds initially at 20 to 25 knots, but reaching up to 30 knots in the late morning. Seas at 1 to 1.5 metres, increasing to 2 metres around midday, and we'll see swells up to 2 metres as well. We can expect another cooler day with a warning to sheep graziers current for the York Peninsula and mid-north. Port Lincoln cloudy with a top of 16 degrees tomorrow, partly cloudy at Cleve 15, Woodner fine and 17. Whyalla and Kadina both looking partly cloudy with tops of 16 degrees, Port Augusta 17, partly cloudy at Port Pirie tomorrow looking at a top of 16, possible morning frost at Clare dropping to 2 degrees overnight, partly cloudy and 12 tomorrow. Broken Hill sunny and 14. Looking ahead to the end of the week now with showers forecast about the Eyre and York Peninsulas as well as the mid-north on Friday. Fine elsewhere with a top of 16 expected at Woodner, Whyalla, Port Lincoln and Kadina. Port Augusta and Port Pirie both 15, Broken Hill 13. More showers on Saturday, this time reaching most districts apart from Broken Hill. Maximum temperatures hovering around 17 and 18 degrees, apart from, again, Broken Hill with a top of just 14. Sunday remaining dry with partly cloudy conditions expected across the region. Port Augusta and Woodner with tops of 18 degrees, Broken Hill 15. So John, some more wet weather on the way.
Thanks, Britt. And that's your local news this Wednesday evening. On behalf of the team, thanks for joining us. I'll have updates later tonight, and we'll be back again tomorrow at 7 p.m. Have a great evening. Good night.